we include werewolves in the scope?
Yes. Because you never know.
You just never know. Review of proposed activities coordinator position description.
So hopefully the revisions capture what you had hoped to achieve in the essential functions. To clarify more of the assisting role.
Has the library director reviewed this? Has she seen it yet?
You mean the senior center director?
Yeah.
Yep. This was sent over to
I
Paula.
mean, the senior center.
Yep. No, this was sent over to Paula after the revisions were made.
Oh, okay. There's no response?
I think the only thing that she was trying to further clarify, if we can find an appropriate place to put in there, is that the ideal candidate would be comfortable sort of operating in a flexible environment. Just the idea that you have your what's planned for the day and things can evolve and change. But the other items seem to be a little clearer.
So I'll go back to a point that Bill had brought up at the last meeting, is that a lot of the essential functions, I don't know how much they align with the title of activities coordinator.
Okay.
I think they align more with like an assistant director, you know,
Right.
or some managerial or you know, administrative assistant. That it gets the feel of that when you're reading the day-to-day tasks. It came about because you need somebody day-to-day to operate and coordinate all of the activities going on here. I think, you know, today Mariah was mentioning there was like back-to-back events all day long here in this building. So, you know, the need for having a coordinator to do that, I'm all for it. I'm just not sure that the title aligns with the scope of work that we're asking them to do. I think the scope of work is actually a little bit above what I would think of an activities coordinator doing.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's just a change to the position title because I like the duties that are discussed in this for under essential functions really do free up the director to be able to take care of the other responsibilities that the director has to do. So I don't want to change the essential functions piece to have it match a title. I think just changing the title so that somebody applying understands that they're not applying for a position to just coordinate
Okay.
activities here in the building. There's other tasks that the two align. And I'm not sure what title that makes the most sense to be.
Right. I can go back out to similar sized towns and take a look at what other variations exist. It's very common to have these functions exist under the heading of an activities coordinator in
Okay.
towns our size. And many of the essential functions and the responsibilities are drawn from similar sized communities with similar positions. So,
Okay.
so I think it's likely that many towns have struggled with or danced around that topic of, is this more of an assisting role, is this more of a managerial type position? I'm sure depending on the scope and size of every department that you're talking about this position being in, they very well may have staff or they may have no staff.
Right.
And so I think in Western Mass communities, you're going to find more of like a broader range of services that fall under a position of this type, with fewer support people to work under them than maybe you would if you had 495 in East. But if you would prefer to look at what a org chart looks like in a Council on Aging Senior Center department in other towns to see if there's a more appropriate title, I'd be happy to pull that information for you.
I don't want it to hold it up. I think the essential functions, all of the
Well, it's important. It's not holding it up. So I think right now, based on our earlier conversations, if we're leaning more towards this just being an assisting role, where somebody is performing more administrative functions, you're talking a classification that's lower on the scale.
Right.
If somebody's going to have more independent responsibility and judgment, that's higher on the compensation scale. So it actually, I mean, yes, it's a title, and yes, we want to be clear about it, but it also impacts where somebody's going to fall on the compensation schedule. So we do want to make sure we're clear on that.
So couldn't we just change the position title from keep it activities coordinator and then put / assistant to the director, or probably more fitting, put it in the statement of duties, essential, where is it, work environment, judgment.
So you want to change in the opening paragraph?
Couldn't we just add a paragraph to essential duties and list assisting the director in the ways that that would happen if she's not there?
Okay.
I mean, that one, I would say that one's covered under 13, other related duties as assigned. Because you really can't list them, there's so many.
Well, right,
Yeah.
but I
A
mean,
general-
in a broad sense, I mean, other related duties, that's so broad that if you're paying me $22, I mean, or $19 an hour, and then you throw in assisting the director when she's not there, and you say that's other duties, you might, that person, that individual, he or she might say, well, wait a minute.
Understood.
I mean,
Yeah, so I can definitely put that in there, but I think, again, we just want to be clear we want to be clear from a communication standpoint to potential applicants in the statement of duties.
right,
But the areas that are going to impact where this falls on the classification schedule
Right.
are going to be in the supervisory functions, the essential functions, and any special requirements for education,
Right.
or previous knowledge or experience. So if we're making revisions to those categories to communicate what you believe is the appropriate vision for this position, that's where I mean, yes, we can do a clarifying sentence, but these other places are where we're going to adjust what you're talking about.
I guess I have the same struggle with the title versus the job duties. However, if that's commonly how it's done, if you will,
Yeah.
I'm by far no activities coordinator expert in senior centers. So
Yeah. I had the
there's
same
a lot
thought.
of admin. To me, it's 50-50 at least.
Okay?
Yeah.
Administrative assistant type duties, right?
Okay.
I mean, half of it is assist with or under direction. That's more of that to me. But that's not to say it doesn't coordinate activities and that that's not necessary. So,
Okay.
Yeah, in my mind, it was just a change to that
I
same
mean, to
title.
me, it's like slash.
Yeah, that's
It's like activities coordinator /
Right.
administrative assistant.
Right.
right.
small community. We're not going to break it out to two roles.
Right.
It's one
Well,
role.
exactly. Yeah, it's just like
Yeah.
Right.
But
5
as you
hours this
started,
week, 15 hours next week might be administrative, and the others,
Right.
whatever.
but as Brian was talking about it, and I agree, Jake, if this is a standard of activities coordinator that people are used to when they're applying for these type of positions throughout the communities around us, then there's no sense in trying to get too crazy and in the minutia of changing that. If this is a standard expectation of job responsibilities under that title that people are accustomed to seeing and following, then there's no sense in reinventing the wheel.
I would agree. But if the three of you are indicating that your vision for this position is more than just an activities coordinator, then if that's what you're saying, then we want to make sure that we capture that correctly.
I'm not laughing at what you're saying, but we're going to go in circles if we go there, I think.
Right.
Only to say that I think we think it's both.
Okay.
So we updated the essential, or you and the senior center director updated the essential functions since our last meeting to better reflect clearly that there are administrative assistant type, administer, keep it open, cover if the director's out on vacation, on training, whatever,
Okay.
assist within the center duties as part of, or some balanced half of, activities coordination type responsibilities. So I think it's both.
Okay.
If you're saying it's going to downgrade it, if we say it's an administrative assistant and don't have activities coordinator in title, I don't think that's our goal. I don't think any of us
No.
are looking to do that to the position.
Right.
So,
Okay.
and if, I think to reiterate what both of us said, if you're saying activities coordinator is the common title of essential functions that are inclusive of what we have in here, then I don't think we're trying to change that.
Okay.
We were trying to make
Correct.
sure it was clear to an applicant, and if you're saying that's what applicants expect when they see these job descriptions, or these job titles,
Right.
then I don't know that we have an issue.
Okay.
That's where that was my last comment as
Yeah,
well.
I don't know if I said it
I don't
better,
want to
but-
create an issue if there isn't
Right,
one.
right. I think are we good with the essential functions? Because
Yes.
that better illustrates
Right.
the items that we discussed.
With
And
all
if
the changes
title's
on there,
a
I'm fine with
non-issue,
it. The
then-
only one is, does the title match our essential functions and the rest of the job description? And if that works, then I don't have an issue with it.
So if you would like, what I can do is finalize these changes, include an introductory statement that addresses that broader role of supporting the director in their absence. Check one more time with surrounding communities and org charts to see if there's a more fitting title than activities coordinator. Though I think many will have this type of position. And if you're happy with these things, finalize the recommendation on the grading, bring it back to you for your next meeting to see if we're there
Yeah.
before we go out to advertising.
Under supervisory responsibility, there's just that first line though. It sounds contradictory. Employees not responsible for regular supervision of any town employees and may provide direction. But may,
But,
I think
Yep.
it's but may, just to, because it's contradictory a little bit. I think you can always say as required or as necessary. Anything else on the draft?
No.
No.
Okay. Discussion of Massachusetts Historical Grant application for the historic structure inventory. Welcome, I'm not sure who's coming up. You're both welcome to join us up here.
So here we are.
We can get more.
That's all we need tonight.
And just for the audience, we have
Sarah Campbell recently reorganized to be the chair of the Historical Commission,
congrats,
and Phil Johnson is the vice chair.
Vice Chair.
welcome.
Thank you.
I think maybe just a high-level background of what the overall goal is,
Sure.
and then kind of into the detail of this specific. I think it's part of a broader
Sure.
goal, I think, right?
Yeah, I think overall, the commission is trying to get up to speed on what's available, what's happening in the state. We've been fairly inactive lately, especially through the COVID period. We were interested in the process that Montague went through with the historic district in Millers Falls. I know David went to many meetings. I went to several meetings. David Brule's our other member. For the audience, we need more members. Feel free to get in touch. So we're aware of that process, and it seems logical that the history of Millers Falls, Montague, and the history of this side of the river are very tightly entwined. So when we became aware of the grants available through Mass Historic, which is a 50% match, to get into the process of inventorying historic structures, understanding the historic value of what we have in town, we pursued it with Beth Giannini from FERCOG because she was the, I guess you could call the lead or the consultant with the town of Montague a few years back. So she spoke to some people at Mass Historic, discussed procedure, how the grant process works, And they said they are encouraging towns in general to get a historic inventory done no matter where it goes, because then you have an idea of what you've got, what the age of your building stock is, how that ties to maybe a historic landmark or that type of thing. So the opportunity to get a 50% grant at this time fits very well with our budget process, obviously, as we go forward. So we wanted to grab onto that opportunity, talk to you about it, see if you thought it was a good possibility, something we should pursue, and move into possibly hiring a consultant to do an inventory in the spring if we get both A, the state funding, and B, the town meeting approval of the town match. At this point, it's just a letter of interest. It's not a big grant process. They're just putting together their budget and want to see who's interested.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
Well, I'm in favor of moving forward with that process, and we'd like to see the Historical Society get more off the ground than it has been in the past. Like to see in the future something, a better heating system in the building, and it has some, although it looks nice from the outside, it has some really major issues inside, as well as issues for handicapped and bathrooms and what have you. It needs a lot of thought and a lot of
Yeah, it's
work.
hard to know where that's going to go.
Right,
Yeah.
right, but it's just certainly a discussion we should have, and
If you look at the state, what they call the MACRIS, whatever that stands for, inventory that was done many years ago in handwriting before computers, the majority of what we have listed in Erving is in the center. There's not much beyond that, which, was the historic focus in the past as the center of town. But there's just not a lot of information that's been officially documented other than that, and that was quite a while ago.
Do you have any sense what 50% is? Like what the grants are typically in terms of total funding or approximate?
From what Beth said, something between $30,000 and $40,000 total, which we'd be responsible for half. They said because there are not that many consultants to do this work, the more you could get done at once, instead of saying, let's focus on Erving side, let's focus on Farley, let's, segment this. If you have an inventory, then you can decide what happens from that inventory.
I had the same question. Is this letter, the letter of intent to apply, is that the one you're referencing that needs to, because part of that is the amount of funding requested. So just curious if we have a dollar amount. You said around 30,000, you thought?
Yeah, I thought if we put in for 40, it might cover the entirety of the town.
Okay.
That's without a consultant's estimate. That's kind of a head scratch between the county and the state.
And that's our match at 40?
That's
Or
half.
That's total?
That's total.
That's the total. We
Total
would be
project.
looking for
So it'd be
20 from the
20.
town.
Okay. That puts it into perspective. Thank you.
Just for clarification, it would be similar to the DEP grants that we've done in the
Right.
past, where we just need to make it part of our budget process, and when town meeting vote is completed, we would just make sure that we had a vote certificate to provide to the state to say that the money's been allocated by the voters. So it doesn't need to be in hand today.
Correct.
It can be done by town meeting.
Well, I would concur with Bill. I'd like to see it go forward. And I like what you said, no matter whether or not this goes forward, getting an inventory of what we have makes sense. Whether or not we get the larger picture of, national registers and wherever that goes, that's a future endeavor, but getting the surveys done,
Information is
You
good.
don't know what you have until you know what you have.
that's right.
I noticed it also references a local project coordinator. Do we have an idea on whose name's going in that field? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but just if we're trying to fill this out and send it in, didn't know if it had been discussed or thought
I volunteer myself.
throughout, okay.
As a, if anyone would like that, because I am in the office full-time.
Yeah, I think we're all, the three of us at least, are enthusiastic about it, but there does need to be somebody who, you know,
A
answers
point, yeah.
questions when they come in.
Monday through Friday, yep.
But we're definitely look at being, you know, putting in some time for sure when the project comes through.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same. If we
Yeah,
don't know,
I
we
have no
don't know. We
concerns
should
with it.
know, and then that opens up, what do we do from there, right? I don't know how you do that without knowing, so. And in the scope of things, we get 50%, and that's not a ton of money for what we get out of it, so. I don't have any concerns.
Do you need a vote for that?
I think I mean, it's just a letter of intent at this point, and we still have an application, so you could wait till the full application is being submitted, but if it felt better at this point for the three of you to authorize us to submit a letter of intent for the grant program of up to $40,000 with a 50% match. That would give, I think, Mariah and I what we need to work with Sarah and Phil to do the initial letter, get that out by the deadline. And then as soon as we hear back from the state, we can come back to both groups and let you know what the response from the state was.
And I'm assuming the timing on this would be next fiscal year? Is that kind of, okay? I think you mentioned spring, and I was like, hopefully in a year. We won't have the authorization for funding until then. Okay. So I think that roundabout was yes. You'd like a motion?
It's up to, I mean, if
Or-
we're going to do a full grant application, absolutely.
Okay.
But it's a letter of intent, so it's sort of one of these half spaces. You could do it now, or if we're
No.
invited to
I
do
think
it
we
full.
support it, so
Okay.
support the letter of intent, and
Yep, send it
and
out.
we'll go from there and see if
Okay.
they select us to apply.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us, bringing it. And just for the record, I didn't call joint because there wasn't a quorum of the historical.
Right.
Because it was posted
Right.
as
There are-
joint,
there are
but
five
because there was
member, but
not
yeah.
a quorum of historical, I did not call the joint specifically.
So we did re-advertise that we do have 2 vacancies. So Sarah's, to everybody listening, Sarah's request for interested members is true. We are looking for 2 members.
We have various vacancies
Yes.
beyond that
We
too,
have
so
lots
if
of
that's
them.
not your taste, we have others.
That's true.
All right. Discussion regarding next steps for the IP mill. Ryan, would you like to come join us for this exciting topic? Haunting topic? maybe more fitting. Yeah, I'm like, just, yeah, please, where we start.
Gathered in August at the elementary school to have a public engagement session. I think it's been our first kind of formal one, at least in many years, to gather what people are thinking about. And I know I was really happy with the turnout. I mean, we can always have more people, but I was really pleased with the people who showed up and the conversations that were had. And in this memo, I highlighted kind of my main takeaways. And one of the things that was really interesting to me was everyone there pretty much seemed to agree that some form of demolition has to take place there for safety purposes, for redevelopment purposes, and that people wanted more information about what that meant, what different options there were when it came to that. And then there was a lot of really great ideas for what people wanted to see in the future. And I think we did a really good job of balancing that conversation between what we realistically have control over right now and what people's hopes and dreams are, which is always a hard balance to strike. And so I kind of outlined some potential next steps. And one of them included I had reached out to Ty and Bond to ask what it would cost for them to give us, I've been calling it a demolition study. I don't really know if that's a thing, but basically I think it's 4 options for for demolition and what each of them would cost, what they would entail, if they're even feasible. One of them is looking at demolishing everything except for 2 and 8. And previously, we've talked about this being possible, but that was old data, and so we don't even know structurally could we even do that at this point. So this would be looking into that. It is kind of a surface level inspection, so it would be, I think, 1 or 2 days was included in terms of an engineer going out there. They're not drilling into the building or doing anything like that. But it would give us up-to-date numbers for various options. And one of them I wanted to include was, what if we took down the 5 buildings that we currently have grant funding for, which I'll get to in a minute. We might not even have funding to cover that. But if we took those down, what would that mean if a developer bought it at that point? Like, how much would they be looking at spending at that point? Or would we be looking at spending if we couldn't offload it once that happens, to get it down to nothing or to 2 and 8? I think that's a really important number to have. If we're trying to take down 5 buildings and then sell it to someone, they're going to say, well, how much of that is left for me to do? So I'd like to have some more concrete numbers to be able to have those conversations and to be able to make those informed decisions going forward on, do we bite the bullet and take the whole thing down now? How do we pay for that? Do we try to put out an RFP again without changing anything? There's so many different options. I think unfortunately, you have to pay for more information at this point, but that's where we're at. We did not get the extra $600,000 from the One Stop program that I had applied for. At this point, we just have the $600,000 that we've previously been awarded. So we need to figure out what we would like to do with that money. I did submit a request to be considered for BioReady status, which is a biotechnology designation. It's basically a website that identifies communities that are ready for biotechnology development to come to their town. Greenfield's the only municipality in Franklin County that currently has I think it's the bronze level. I think that we meet the requirements. There's a few outstanding questions that I asked about, so we'll see. We didn't have to pay anything for that. That was just to kind of get us on a literal map. There's some future public engagement I'd like to do. And then there's also the Complete Neighborhoods Partnership is a grant that we applied for a few months ago, and we got it. We're a part of 5 communities who are regionally doing a project together. And it comes with consulting funds. And one of the requests that I've put in is to potentially use a small amount of that funding to do some renderings of what the IP mill complex could look like if it was redeveloped. And I'm not talking, the tie and bond proposals have technical drawings. I'm talking pretty drawings that you can look at that and go, that looks like a nice mill building. I would like to go there. Because it's so hard. If you think about even ripping off building 1, what that would even look like. And it's so hard to think about if someone was to put nice landscaping there and make it a habitable place, what that could look like if you were driving by or if you were visiting a business or if you lived there. And so I think it would be really helpful as we're talking with community members to be able to point to something and say, it could look like this, no matter what's in there, whether it's a Dunkin' Donuts or apartments, like it could look this nice. And I think that would go a long way. Yeah, that's a lot of information I just dumped on you.
I've got a couple of things if you're
Yeah,
good to
absolutely,
go.
please.
So on the tie and bond estimate, the number 1 is what you're talking about, getting rid of 4, 5, 7, that section of buildings, and hopefully that would still fall within the 600, which I'm not optimistic that it will.
Right.
The only request I was going to say is when we ask Tie and Bond to do that piece of it, if we go forward with it, if there's a way that they can break down, various sections of that instead of holistically, so that if we find out that
Okay.
4, 5, A, B, and C, 4 is this much, 5A, 5B, 5C is this much, we may have to cap it at 600, and we can start figuring out, what we can take down for our 600.
Alternates or something like that.
Yeah, and so,
we
you
can
know,
try to figure that out. The challenging part is that it's not a cost per building because each scenario you're then propping up different things, right?
Correct.
So maybe we can identify like kind of a few subcategories that seem logical of like we take down all the building fives, A, B, and C or whatever they are.
Right.
Yeah, I can definitely
Yeah,
work on
if
looking
the,
at that.
if the engineer's out there and just does the high level and looks at it and says, if we take down just this one building, we can structurally do that, but you're gonna prop this up, or taking down just this one,
Right.
and figuring that out. I wouldn't break it down all the way to just 5A or just 5B.
Yeah,
I
but
would
conceptually,
group-
what are some pieces?
What
that
are
we
some
could-
pieces that we
yeah.
could do so we could have breakout dollar points on those instead of all of those and tell us that it's gonna be 900,000?
Yeah, that's not helpful.
What can we do with our 600 now? We don't know how far that'll go without, asking the town for more money. I'd like to use as much of the grant money and know how to spend that appropriately.
Can I jump in before we
Yep.
go on? From my recollection, 4E, 5A, B, C are the areas that are already compromised.
Yeah.
And then 7AB is just the back part that's kind of just the last thing added on.
It's more like the steel shed kind of.
Yeah, the garage.
The
or
garage, yeah.
Yeah, the loading bay, whatever you want to call it, and the room next to it. So to me, those feel like a natural grouping because we almost, I just off the top of my head feel like 5ABC and 4E are the part that are going to continue to erode
Well, that's the
and
liability.
fail. Right. Well, the whole thing is, but
Yeah.
But sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Yeah. No, you're
That is
absolutely
even
correct.
worse than
Yeah, those are the
that's the
logical
worst part.
groupings.
Yeah. So maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe a focus on,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of the 4 or 5 ABC because it's already further compromised.
Yeah.
And then,
Unfortunately, 7 is probably the quickest, easiest, and cheapest to
oh, I
demolish.
know.
But, showing that and saying, 4,
Yeah.
5, A, B, and C is this much. And if we can show that 7A, 7B is just quick and easy and it's not a lot of extra money,
Right.
and you can parse those out as two different, the taxpayers might look at that and say, we still want that one gone. It's not usable, and it's not that much more above our 600.
Right. By the time you mobilize and start taking other things down, it could be.
Right. Rather than doing the 600 and then having to bring somebody back 6 months later,
Yeah.
if it was an additional 100,000, it's now 250,000, because they got to bring everything back and do it all over again.
Right.
I only had one other point, is I would agree that the conceptual drawings of like what a facade might look like, they do help. And I would encourage that we do something like that. There's a, tangent story, but there's a hotel up at a local beach that I go to all the time, finally got bought out and is being renovated, and everybody saw the drawings and that was one thing, but as soon as they posted on a website of this is what it's going to look like with our addition and the new facade, everybody was like, when can I start booking rooms? And this looks great. That conceptual drawing really
Yeah.
does bring a lot of attention and gets people interested in, oh, I didn't have the vision of what it might look like.
Right.
So if we can get that would be fantastic.
I'm gonna let you go,
You're gonna let
sir.
me go next? Okay. I agree with everything Scott said. I think the rendering, especially because we have greenery and color and people and children and whatever, right? You have all of that. It feels like something you could walk to and see. For most people in architectural print, it looks like lots of lines and numbers and fine print that don't mean anything or don't mean much, right? So that kind of 3D aspect piece of it is really important. And it does get past a little bit of what's in it. It's just what it could be. I know it's continuing to spend on it, but under $10,000 to refresh stuff. It has been a long time since we did that. I don't think that's bad, and to focus on how do we use the 600,000. I will say you shouldn't say you didn't get 600,000. You didn't get another 600,000. Let's just be clear. I know you said that, but you should start with that. And how do we use that? Because we don't want to forgo that either,
Right.
in my opinion. I don't think do nothing is, while we can do it, I don't think that's prudent, and I don't think we can, not really.
One of the questions that I haven't asked Mass Development yet, that maybe you all would like me to ask this, is if we went for full demolition or demolition of everything except for 2 and 8, could we use that $600,000 towards that with the town somehow paying for the rest of it? And I know that that's a huge thing to think about, but if it doesn't make sense to take down a couple buildings at a time, and we're ultimately looking at doing full or mostly full demolition anyways, it might make sense to at least look into whether we could use that almost as a match.
I guess it puzzles me to think that they'd care. But
Well,
if they would,
is
I would
that-
say let's ask. But
Isn't that because the caveat is that the 600 was supposed to be tied with housing? Or
Well,
no?
basically the caveat is that I applied for a very specific reason.
Oh, okay.
I applied with the idea that there was going to be an access road. We were demolishing enough
Okay,
buildings.
so the
to
scope,
put access,
scope
like-
of work
gotcha.
is,
And they have been very kind and said, like, we can wait and figure out what we're doing. But that would be a large change to what I had proposed.
Got
I
it.
haven't asked the question of whether that makes a difference. Their end goal is to have economic development in that location. So they might say, if you think that's what you need to do to be economically viable, go for it. Or they might say, that's a big enough change that we feel like we need to have you reapply or something.
yeah,
all right, that makes more sense. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
For me, yeah.
yeah.
I guess my thought would be yes. Ask the question. It'd be good to know.
Okay.
We're gonna get new demo costs, and we should know how does that play in or not if we choose to go to whatever scale. Yeah, and I agree with, another RFP right now until we do something, change something there that makes it more appealing, or changes it somehow. Maybe it's not more appealing, but it's different than it was. I don't see how that does anything but waste time and effort and money. I wish I had some other profound thing to add, but I don't, because
Well,
it's a difficult project that we face, and I do think, getting some sense from the voters of what, beyond we kind of had the discussions with some of the key players and people in town that are involved in committees and such already. Is there an appetite to pay for demo?
Yeah.
Some amount, whatever that is, it's more than zero, so, and we can sort out how much later, but at all,
Yeah.
to me, I don't know how we do that exactly, but that's one that comes to mind. Bill, if you had anything, and then Scott, I think you were.
Yeah, I agree with both my colleagues. They're all saying things that I agree with, but I do think the end game is for this site is demolishing it. I don't see any other way to get around it. I think we spent enough money, and I think the public, I know I would be willing to spend the money if we had a real plan on this is what we're going to do moving forward. But to use grants as much as we can, clearly. I think considering the economic climate today, that it's not going to get any better anytime soon. And the longer we wait to do something, the more it's going to cost us in the end. And I think we demolish and with an idea of telling the town this is the plan moving forward. Maybe more than one plan to give people a choice or something to really discuss. And we keep talking. We've talked years for now since I've been on the select board about doing something with the town hall, and we keep asking for money and for that, and it sits there and we don't do anything. And when we clearly know that the building is too small.
Right.
and will never fit the needs going forward for a viable town hall for the town of Erving. So there's a lot of things we can do. Senior housing still isn't out. People still want to see senior housing. I really believe that, and despite the vote that happened a few months ago against PUD, had it been a discussion about senior housing, I think it would have passed clearly, overwhelmingly. So we could do senior housing in that location along with a new town building, public building, that serve the complete needs of the town moving forward. I think that's the way to go. And I think to do anything less than that is just a waste of time and money. And I think we've wasted enough of that already.
So move forward, you're kind of summarizing demolition is the direction to move
Right.
in, and
Yeah,
doing this ties in with the town hall feasibility study of whether there's a municipal use at this location, whether that's after full demolition or with
Right.
any of the buildings that could be left. And I don't know, in terms of sequencing, how to go about that, of looking at a municipal use while we're also, there's a lot of intertwining here.
I think you still need to start with this step, having an expert come in and give us updated demolition costs, because the numbers that we have are about 4 years old.
Yeah.
So I think that is your first step before we can have these other conversations.
So I had just put down, you have potential next steps and you have them numbered in there. I would say you move forward with 2, 4, and 5. And 2, being, so just for those at home that can't see what 2, 4, and 5 are, it's go ahead with the demolition study, get the updated numbers, see about finding some funding for renderings of different options of what it might look like, whether it's a municipal building, whether it's a senior housing or a commercial building, who knows, different options that are out there. But I think scheduling a further public engagement is important. We had talked about being inclusive of getting people there. We had a great showing for that meeting at the school the last time we did it. But I would say that if we're going to schedule further public engagement, we really at some point have to narrow down the focus of where we as a town want to go. Because if we go in with to a meeting saying, what do you want? And there's 50 people in the audience, you might get 49 different varying opinions and none of them will align.
Yeah.
And so we could banter those around all day. So
Yeah.
based on the demolition numbers and potential viable uses, I think we come to a public engagement with some direction, whatever that direction might be, whether it's complete demolition, rebuild for public use, or for municipal use, complete demolition, and whatever that may be. But we
Right.
have to sort of set that tone of what that conversation is going to be, because, just in the meeting we had for the very first one, it ranged from tear it all down, put in a park, to leave certain buildings and redo the facades and have maker stations in there, and
Yeah.
it was very diverse about ideas of how to reuse that, both buildings and or land. So I think just really drilling down, what are the couple of ideas that we want to see pursued, and let's have discussions about those and see if any of those can grab some traction.
Yeah. My thoughts for scheduling another public engagement session would be probably sometime in January or early February. That would give us, it sounds far away now, but the next 2 months are going to fly by. And it'll give us time, if you choose to move forward with the demolition study, time to figure that out. Time to talk to the Complete Neighborhoods Partnership people about whether it's possible to get renderings. If so, I don't know when that would happen.
Right.
If it was possible to time, maybe not the next community engagement, maybe it's the following one, but time it so that we have some renderings. But it would be nice to have something in the winter, and I was thinking about partnering with the library to do an event there, or with the senior center, or both. I have an idea that I'd like to have it be more than just a sit-down conversation like we had last time. I think that's great, but I think we could pull in more diverse demographics. If we have it at a place like the library where there's going to be families coming in, we could have Legos set up for people to build a mill that they would like to envision there. I could talk with the historical commission if they would like to do some kind of a presentation on mills in New England or mills in Erving. Having more than just a conversation, which I think the conversation is important, but bringing out more people and perhaps not as formal discussions, but the things that you hear when you're just talking with someone about, oh, I remember when it used to be like that. I'd love to see this again, or something.
As far as the renderings, I would put those last. And the reason I say that is, still pursue them and see what, if there's some grant funding out there to do it. But see what, if we drill it down to 2 or 3 potential uses of that property, then do
Right.
some renderings based on that, because otherwise you're just abstractly picking or arbitrarily just picking a couple of options and saying, let's do renderings based on this, and it may
Right.
not be in the direction that we
Yeah.
end up wanting to go.
It seems very likely that we will have that included because the cost of that will be a few $1,000s. And because we're partnering with 5 towns for that partnership, and everyone else's projects are like in the multiple tens of thousands, and our project is in like the $20,000 range, and they all felt bad for us as we're negotiating. And so they were like, well, does Erving want anything else? And I was like, renderings, please. So as we're coming together with that partnership, figuring out kind of what projects we're going to be working on, I think that's a very small project that I could say we would really appreciate to have this. And I think it would be even though it's a small monetary ask, I think it would make a big improvement to this. But yeah, I agree. The more that we can narrow down what our options
Yeah.
are before we have those, that
2,
would be
3,
great.
4 options, something that.
Yeah, I was thinking that clearly people want commercial, would like to see commercial, so we know that. People want to see housing, senior housing. We already know that. We've known that for decades, that they want that. And we also know that we need a town hall. So could you do a rendering that brought those 3 things together and showed how they could work together and function together?
Right. Or we could do them
as
together.
one.
We could also perhaps have, 3 different ones of what would a town hall look
Right.
like there, what would housing,
Right.
yeah.
I think that those three separate parts, bring them together, and even if people decide, I take that away. And I think it'll bring a discussion to a point where you have more of an agreement on what should be there, as opposed to scattered all over the place,
Yeah.
which is where we are now, I think.
So on those topics, if the 3 of you were comfortable allowing us to go forward with tie and bond to begin that work and could authorize that procurement, you do have funds in your consulting line that we could allocate for this. And then second to that, we've had it's at the RFQ stage, I believe, for town hall. That's been drafted and sitting on the shelf, waiting for the right moment when we had capacity and time. And the decision at the time was to work on public works. And so we went down that road. But the draft for town hall has been ready. So we just need to change dates. We could bring that back for the 3 of you to review at an upcoming meeting if you would like to start that project. As long as you feel like you have the capacity to work on that project.
I was going to flip the question the other way and say, as long as you and
We have a
the 2 of
placeholder on the
you.
plan.
Yeah, so
we
we
put
had
a
talked
placeholder.
about it, about having it start this winter. I think that would be fine. We
Yeah.
kind of moved things around to where.
Yep.
I think the 2 dovetail together nicely as far as
They
having
may.
the discussion, having the information so we can have a substantial discussion about potential municipal use at that
Yeah.
location based on the study that we get. So,
Okay.
I'll start with the one that I have in front of us. Are you ready for a motion or not?
I am, yes.
I was just gonna
Stuff,
say,
but not about that, so go with it.
yeah.
So,
Well,
Oh, go ahead, Bill.
actually-
is this motion going to include selective demolition?
So,
It was for the tie-in bond proposal
okay,
in
for the
there,
tie-in
which
bond.
was
Okay, all right.
4E,
Okay. Yep, yep.
5 ABC.
Yeah, it's
7
got
AB,
the four tasks.
and then 2 and 8 something, and 2 and 8 by its stays, 2 and 8, I forget what the one in between is, and then everything.
Yes.
So a few versions of selective and all.
right, correct.
On the all, that was gonna be my question, one of my questions. Without too much effort or change in cost or scope, could we find out if they can give us an idea on their thoughts on how much the all would change if it was being done as part of something new? Because we're talking about projects that maybe raise it and build. at
For
the same
us or
time.
for a private developer? Because those are going to be two different numbers.
Say those are vastly different.
Yeah. How much of the demo costs are avoided by that? Not what is all of that going to be, but there's a certain amount of that would probably be absorbed as part of site prep and planning around a new build anyway, right? Or maybe
That's
not.
an interesting question.
You follow
Like,
where I'm
right, because
going?
like you're mobilizing once. It's
You're mobilizing to raise the site,
Right.
but if you were just going to build and it was an empty site, you're mobilizing to some level and doing some prep to some level. Where if you just demo and then you have to grade and you have to, refill
Right.
any of the foundations, all that stuff. If you're building, you may be just expanding those trenches and filling stuff in and moving on, right? I
yeah.
don't know if
I
it is
feel like that's
significant, but-
yeah. I totally understand what you're saying. I think that's something that we can ask the consultant to include. I don't know that would be an entirely other subcategory or anything, but I think we can just say like, if this was part of a construction project, would this change drastically, or would this be
Yeah,
like
just directional, nothing
Yeah,
like
okay.
exactly $327,000.
Right.
Just is it 10% of the cost? Is
Yeah,
it
okay.
That's a
25%
good point,
of the
because some of
cost,
those, some of those footings and foundations may not have to be completely taken out if you're rebuilding over them. You might have to change the layout and add to and adjust, but
well, and
Or
that
you're
might
not hauling in material, hauling off material.
Right.
There's all
Right.
those.
yeah.
I won't call them hidden costs, but things you might do twice, right? That you
Right.
don't have to do.
yeah.
And just directionally, how much is that? If it's, I don't know, just throwing numbers out there, don't have any basis. $3 million to demo everything, and it's $300,000 if you build something at the same time. Well, I don't know if that makes sense in the scope and cost, and who knows what we're doing. If it's $1 million, maybe we should determine if we are going to do something before we demo.
Right. Have a
to
plan in
prepare,
place.
and
Right.
even if that's phased in how we do it. So anyway, that doesn't change what you're going to do.
I was going to make a motion to engage Ty Bond to update a building demolition sequencing and cost proposal for IP Mill in the amount of $9,200.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We'll get that done tomorrow. And then in terms of public engagement piece, I think the other thing that we talked about a little bit last time and we didn't maybe have everything in place or weren't able to schedule one was having some presentations by some experts about options. Affordable housing is one. I know there was a lot of dialogue about what is that versus what the impression of that is. And having someone come and kind of speak and present. I mean, I'd even like to hear it and understand it. I'm no expert. To better understand that concept.
Yeah.
Because I think you sent us the numbers and I was like, I couldn't afford that rent. I didn't pay that rent not that long ago, as a single person, paying rent, that what was affordable was expensive
Yeah.
as far as I was concerned. So, having those, scheduling something where we can do that stuff.
Yeah, I would still very much like to do that. I think, again, we'll probably be best off if we're looking at after all of the holidays that are coming up in the next few months. So I think that gives us time to plan something. I also want to be it's very challenging and tricky, and I know you all understand this, but I want to be clear that when we're talking about affordable housing, it's not just about if there was housing at the IP mill. And when we're talking about the IP mill, it includes all of these different uses. And so I think I would like, if we're going to plan a talk on housing, to not have that be combined with a talk on the IP mill specifically. Because I think it will get muddy very quickly. So I think we should just be intentional when we're planning these. Like, we can have a talk on housing, and that might be inclusive of housing at the IP mill if that's the direction that that goes. But it also could be senior housing. It could be housing back here. It could be anywhere in town.
Yeah, and maybe just as an informational session, but I agree
Right.
with you. It's already been muddied many a time. And
Yeah.
so intentionally separating them, I agree, would be key. Question? If you can come up to the mic, please, for the audience.
Welcome to my table.
So, if I'm understanding correctly, one of the things you're considering with the IP mill is a town hall. That's something that's being talked about?
This is the first talk of it, other than the session when people brought it up as a possibility.
Okay, I mean, because my understanding of most small towns is the town hall is in the center of town. So, I guess my concern is, are townspeople going to get a say on if this is something you guys really want to pursue? Are we as a townspeople going to get a say as to if the town hall is moved out of the center of town and in this kind of obscure place within our town? That's all.
At the end of the day, anything we do is going to have to be approved and funded by all of the citizens, so absolutely.
Yeah.
And there'll be lots of discussions and engagement beforehand before we'd even bring a, fully formed cost and plan to do something like that. We wouldn't, I would just speculate, we wouldn't even go down that road if the general discussions leading up to that that's not where we want it to be, then we wouldn't waste the money, time, and effort to
Right.
plan a design that showed that, into any depth.
Okay, that's all.
Similar,
Just,
similar to the conversation Mariah was just having about the conversation of housing being lumped in with the IP mill renovation conversation or reuse conversation, this need for a town hall being renovated at its current location or relocated somewhere else needs to happen. It's been just tabled. It may be a site like this. It may not be a site like this. So we just need to be very intentional and thoughtful about how we have all of these conversations so that they're not so intertwined, because they really are distinct and separate things. But could they overlap? They may. And that's a voter conversation with the select board.
And we will need a committee to evaluate any feasibility studies.
Lots of committee
Perhaps there's someone who would be interested in joining that.
Yeah, we have to
Let's
revisit
write that name down right now. Thank you, Kelly.
I think that, like Brian said, we need to do something with town hall. It's not suitable the way that it is, whether the IP mill is the location or not. We need to have a broader conversation as a community about where people should be working. And if that's important to people to have that be in a town center location. Irving has multiple of those, so what does that mean? Yeah, I think there's a lot of good conversation that can happen there.
okay, that's all. Thank you.
I would also say we need a public works building. So,
Right.
we started down that path and have kind of put it on pause for now, need to come back to it.
Right.
I think your point is spot on. There's actually a lot of different large things we need, and how and when, and how they're funded, and where they fit and where they go, are all open for debate.
Yeah.
In the back of my head, I think about the tour we just did of the
Yep.
Montague, this new DPW building, which is kind of in their public safety complex right now. That's what it looks like. And if a lot of our buildings weren't newer and more recently built, the idea of having things centrally located as in an area, and that's a large parcel, sounds interesting.
Well, and we
But,
have that
you know.
currently. We're starting
We
that
have
here.
it here,
And so what
right,
does that
so-
mean?
so-
There's so many places that town hall could be if we had infinite resources, and we could just renovate the town hall where it is now. It'd be great. But yeah, does it make sense to continue to cluster municipal buildings here? Does it make sense to keep it on the other side of town in a different location? There's a lot of questions to answer there.
I think just keeping our, all ideas out there and different possibilities as we work through these.
The one challenge that I think we're all sort of talking about that we need to grapple with, there's a change, I think, in the way that municipalities are approaching construction. And I think Irving's sort of on that cusp where everything was built as standalone facilities. Maybe they made sense where they were at the time. Maybe they no longer make sense where they are today, right? Maybe they have emotional or sentimental values that people say outweigh maybe an economic reason to move something or share something, right? some towns are moving towards either shared complexes or shared campuses, so that even if they're standalone, separate, distinct buildings, they have shared heating infrastructure and shared other infrastructure, so that your maintenance isn't spread out across the municipality. They're more localized. So whether that's in 2 groupings or 1 grouping, or they're all standalone facilities, I think those are just some of the conversations that people are wrestling with. As just trying to be a little more energy conscious. You're trying to think about creating walkable, safe neighborhoods and resources. As you're trying to think out all of these complexities, it starts to speak about being more intentional about placement of these facilities and how people interact with them, as opposed to it was convenient at the time, and because we're already there, we need to stay. Maybe we do stay. Doesn't need to be altered so it achieves all these other goals, or they're more of these shared campus type approaches. And I'm not saying there's one right answer to any of that. I think those are really complex, hard conversations. But
Gives you some direction to get started on the next steps, hopefully. Anything else to add?
No,
No?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
thank you.
Do we have you, before you go back to the other seat, anything else on here?
I don't think.
I don't think so, right? Okay, thank you. Back to the top, review the no smoking policy, third read.
did that change accomplish what you were hoping?
I have no concerns with the third read. It reads very well.
And I changed the word owned to controlled, just to be clear that we typically own everything in this town. But if you're releasing it, like we finally leased a loader recently,
No,
so it's not ours yet, but we control it. The idea is still the same. If it's a municipal use, say you needed to rent office space for town hall for 2 years while a building
It's
was
still
being
town
renovated,
controlled.
it's still town controlled.
But it doesn't have to be. It's any public. It's a state law. It's any public. It's not just town, right?
We're not
That's the-
regulating on other. We're not getting into
On-
the state
on
properties or anything
Public,
like that.
okay.
We're
Public
just
ways,
dealing with
just in
our
town, okay.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yep. And this is more coming
think
from
you
the
wanna-
employee control, the employee protection side of things. So
Yeah.
you're coming at it trying to ensure a safe work environment.
Right.
The fourth line down there, you have town-owned public building as well. Just want to change that.
Oh, in section 3.
Dot 2. O2. In the place that you have the
Oh,
edits, there's another
Oh,
one
yeah.
in the middle.
I will make those last 2
2. Is there 2?
in under .03.
Ah, I missed that one.
I'll make those changes.
Other than being consistent there, I have no concern. No
Or-
changes.
And 05.
I just love it. Where it says town owned will now read town control.
Well, yeah, they'll all read town control.
Okay.
I didn't want to throw it at you,
That's
but,
fine.
so those are just technical changes. They're not substantive. Are you,
Yeah.
everybody happy with it? The
Yes.
way it's been
Yes.
amended?
Yep.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve the no smoking policy, file ADM-111 as amended.
And effective.
Whatever, 10/31/2022.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Review of the bloodborne pathogen exposure control plan policy draft.
I see you made, are you ready for some input?
Please.
I see you made some, the changes about adding, duplicating the duties in the fire department, about various tasks and adding the school and doing all those.
Right.
The only section that I had some thoughts on
Yep.
is section 7, when you talk about work practices.
Okay.
And again, the idea that a lot of these are, they're duplicated.
Right.
And so I'm wondering if in general, if there's a way to sort of start with putting on gloves, putting on,
You're
utilizing.
saying just blanket statement for any of the following.
For any of the following, you put this, and then only parsing out those that are substantially different from the general universal precautions that
Okay.
everybody thinks of using when you're going into something that has bloodborne pathogens or, any other potential health risks.
Okay.
And there was just little things, and you can tell that this was a working group that put these together. The accident event, first one was Dawn gloves. Everybody else is put on. They're just, it's different language, different
the
people
same,
were
but-
giving the same, different input. So it's not consistent from,
Okay.
we talk about using healthcare gloves. Under accident event, it doesn't say whether it's healthcare gloves or are we using, stick proof? Are we using,
Okay.
Uh,
So, would you like me for your next meeting, make an attempt at calling it out like you're discussing? Make those revisions in this section. I've already sent this back out to all the different departments
Yeah.
that this is primarily going to impact. Send them out that further revised version. It's not going to change the overall feedback that they're giving because we're not taking anything away. We're just changing the way it's presenting, maybe streamlining it a little bit more.
Right, it's not content, it's
Right.
delivery or
Exactly. Trying to reduce some of that duplication.
different things under work practices as it relates to bloodborne pathogen exposure. If you're looking down at, still in work practices, under EMS activities, administration, including blood sugar, lancets, syringes, and IV stylates, it doesn't give any, it's just saying that we use them, or somebody might use them under EMS activities, but there's no,
Oh, you know what? I'm glad you called that one out because that's actually broken off from the one above it. That's the continuation. So
okay,
it
I was
says,
going to say, it reads very
feels
strange.
incomplete.
It felt very incomplete to me.
you're right. It looks like somebody accidentally put it in
Oh,
there.
so it
supposed to
grabbed-
be a bullet. It's
it grabbed
supposed to be
another
the
bullet.
sentence,
It's a
That's what it did.
medical administration.
I was trying to understand why it was starting with a lowercase. a.
Medication.
Yeah, I was looking at that saying, this does not make sense to me.
But now when you put the two together, now it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I'm glad you caught that. I'll fix that.
Yeah, so I think if you're looking at things like under evidence, syringes, needles, and other sharps required to be stored in a hard shell plastic container. It also, under EMS activities, all medical sharps will be disposed immediately into a medical sharps disposal container.
They're talking about the same thing.
They're just duplicated.
Yep.
And there's a few of those in there.
Okay.
And some of those, it feels like, regardless of what grouping it falls under,
It's-
if you're handling them, that's where they go. That's just general, like top level stuff.
And it's accurate for the way it's being practiced. Right. It doesn't matter if it's EMS or it's evidence at the police department or it's
Or if
public
it's at the
works.
school or public works,
They're
if
all
there's,
using the same
you're
equipment.
handling something with blood on it, you're putting on gloves.
Yep.
If you're handling something with a copious amount, you are putting on a different, so all of these different things, they're standardized across all departments.
So let me make an attempt at fixing that,
Yeah.
bringing the things that are just going to be standard practice to the top category. And then we'll leave what's left as the call-outs for specific
Yeah.
tasks.
I think it's just
Yeah, and
easier,
It's like general, and then
Yeah.
specific event,
right, and I think it's
additional
easier to
precautions for specific.
right,
kind
I
of
think
thing,
it's easier to comprehend as an employee looking at that saying, no matter what situation I go to, these are the general safety precautions that I'm going to employ as an employee here. This is what I'm going to use. And if there's any call-outs, here they are.
Right. Okay, I'll make that change.
Other than that, I didn't,
So
Getting
I'd like
closer?
to agree with Scott that when I looked at the gloves, the issue I had was, well, there's all kinds of gloves.
Right.
I think we would want the highest standard, and the highest standard for me for gloves is a puncture-proof glove that will work with needles and things that might be picked up that are not readily punctured.
Okay.
So I hope when we're looking at equipment and materials that we're looking at it with a real keen eye as to what level of protection it provides, and not just buy a pair of gloves or
Right.
or a shield when it's not shatterproof or whatever.
Right.
So
I think it's the importance of you all having this conversation and keep working to refine and get this to the standard that you want it. Again, a lot of this is boilerplate information that the federal government would like everybody to have in place. But how that gets interpreted and to what standard, I think the lower level meets the standard.
Right.
If you all are communicating a higher standard,
right.
yeah.
that is absolutely
Right.
your discretion, and then making sure it's easy to understand for all the departments, easy for new employees to understand the expectation, and make sure that supervisors are keeping stocked on the items that you say are the standard is what's important here. So those are important changes that we can make, absolutely.
Yeah, and to follow that up, Bill, I think having the general precautions and the procedures be a general healthcare glove. I'm not anticipating a teacher that is cleaning up 4 drops of blood on the floor from a student who got a bloody nose to go out and get stick-proof gloves and use that. So that's incident specific. If you're talking about law enforcement, somebody going to a motor vehicle crash, or or a teacher who is somebody cut their hand going through a window. Now maybe if they're cleaning up glass, they need to. That's where the secondary precaution comes in. That's where the call out for when necessary, due to
Right.
sharps, broken glass.
Right. 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 I agree. I say that only because, and you're right, there are certain functions for it and certain instances where you would need to use those.
Right.
But I can remember going down to the Usher Plant Park and finding syringes laying on the ground. And my wife was trying to pick it up, and I said, no, leave it alone, let
Right.
it stay where it is. Call someone who has the equipment to pick it up and remove it.
And to that point, if, say they call building and grounds, in the
Right.
truck for building and grounds,
Right.
do they have puncture-proof
Right.
gloves
Right. Do
ready
they
to
have
go?
stick-proof? Yeah.
Right.
So that's
Right.
exactly,
Right.
you're all touching upon making sure the right tools are in the right places for
Right.
any incident we may encounter.
Right.
I can absolutely work on that.
Okay.
Up in 05 in the table there, just under, like under police department, you have injured resident or suspect. Should be injured person is fine, I think, in that section.
Number 5, police
Yeah, because
department.
you treat them the same. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter what their
Yeah.
Makes sense.
subtitle is, I guess, if you will. And realistically, that belongs under fire and EMS as well. I think. I don't have anything to add beyond what both of you have already added beyond that. This is a lengthy one, so it takes a bit.
So I'll make those changes, bring back to your next meeting.
Yeah, anything else
No.
now? We'll see you in the next read.
I got nothing else now.
No?
So this was our start of moving into the OSHA policies, and this was the hardest one, and I thought the highest priority one, so we worked on this one first. We have a few others sort of in draft format ready to go. If we were able to work with the safety committee to get those ready for your next meeting, would you be interested in the first read on those new OSHA ones? It's like 2 or 3 more. I know we're getting very policy heavy for weeks here.
Yeah.
I'll let you know when I get the agenda. done.
Okay.
Unless you two want to
It's
say
in the
yes.
hopper. This was the most important one I thought of.
I'm going to let you make that call.
Okay. I know they're just reads, but we may spread them out. We'll see. We're
Okay.
getting into budget and all these other things too, and
Right,
that we need to hit on. So
right,
just being conscious of that. The lists are yeah, it's growing.
right.
Review of surplus equipment requests, administration, highway, and fire, third read. Any concerns, changes?
I have no
Ready
concern.
to,
Is this the third read?
this
Yep,
is the third
this
read.
is.
Yep.
Are we ready to make it so?
Okay.
And I think we had already determined how we were going to post those there.
You've decided, if I remember correctly, the dump body and the truck are going to be bid as a grouping. We're not going to be responsible for connecting it and testing it. So whoever buys it will come and get it and be responsible for that. And that will go on a bid site. All of the other items we're going to make available through local auction, through the around town and our website to residents. First come, first serve. And as lots, specifically those chairs, things of that nature.
Right.
And then before things are disposed of, if they're not claimed, people don't want them, we're going to make them available to other towns before they end up in metal dumpsters or anything like that.
Sounds like what I recall.
Yep.
Okay.
Would one of you like to make a motion?
So there are multiple requests. You want a motion on each one of those?
Yeah, if
To-
you could do
to-
each of the requests.
Each of the requests?
Yep, that'd be great.
Let's see. Make a motion to deem the following property surplus. Requested by administration, 2 wooden folding tables, 60 metal stacking chairs, 24 stacking plastic chairs, and 2 air conditioners. They'll be listed for
Second.
local use.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then,
Thank you.
you're welcome. I'm gonna get down, scroll down here. Make a motion to deem the 2010 Ford F550 surplus and make available for public bidding for highest price.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
And lastly, I'll make a motion to deem the airflow truck body deemed surplus, and we'll put it out for public bid for the highest price
With the truck.
Second.
with the truck. Yes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
With, not attached.
With, yeah.
All right, we'll get those going.
Thank you.
Review of the police department policy 4.36 cadet training policy draft.
So I believe Chief made the edits that he believed you were looking for to the policy.
Yeah, and I apologize. I should have reached out to the chief ahead of time. I did have one additional question on that, and it's almost just a duplication. I'm wondering if it makes sense to duplicate it, I should say. Under qualifications, it's the ability to attend and successfully complete. And it goes on talking about the academy. But I'm wondering if that should also be listed under training, because that is the training they're going to get. So the qualification is the ability to do so, but part of their training they're going to get is attending that. So having it in both spots, never mind just the ability, but you will actually attend,
That's
you know.
appropriate. So if that was restated as no longer an ability, but an expectation of the training program.
It's the expectation, yeah. That's the only change that I would request.
Okay.
I guess I would, under qualifications, I'd just, ability to attend, not the ability to attend, it's the ability to complete. I don't think attend needs to be there.
Okay.
You need to be able to complete it. It's not about attendance, right? So I just don't
Right.
think that's necessary there.
Oh,
Just
so
say
just
to
the-
attend and, they just say ability
To
to
complete.
successfully complete. It's a little bit extra words, but I don't think they're needed.
Okay.
And then we have it up under essential knowledge too. I don't know if you got that. It'll be there 3 times. It's the last bullet in essential knowledge, skill, and ability. That might be where ability goes. Ability to.
Okay.
Because it talks about successfully passing. So that would be the ability to successfully pass. That's a skill. Qualification is I think, I don't know.
Yeah, with those few changes, I mean, I just want to make sure that it's clear that if somebody, if we post this, you know, if we get to a point where we post it for the general public and we're ready to move forward with it, that somebody looking to read this description understands that they're applying for this position with the full intention of attending, completing, and becoming a full sworn officer with Erving. I don't want them to read it and have any ambiguity about what the end result is going to be. The end result is not to stay a cadet and work as a non-sworn officer. It's to attend the academy, be a full sworn officer.
Yep.
So I think just really overstating that a few times is worth it.
It's important.
With that in mind, under section 1, should the last sentence of that first paragraph be the first sentence instead? To say, the position is designed to allow an individual to become a sworn officer? Like, that's the opening statement, rather than the closure of that first paragraph?
Yeah, I think just
I mean, that's like literally the
That's what-
substance of what you just said, right?
Yeah,
What
just-
is this about? It's to,
Okay.
I think
eventually
putting it in the
become.
forefront. Just flip it. Yeah,
Make those changes.
just put it in the top.
Okay.
I like that. I think we talked about that last time, getting some concise language about the goal of this.
Yep. And that sentence does have it. It's just buried at the bottom of a paragraph rather
Right.
than the forefront of the beginning.
Okay. We'll make that change. Do you want to have
Any-
this come back in front of the 3 of you?
I think the changes that we
Anything else?
talked about
Are you
are,
good?
I don't have anything
I was
else.
going to say they're all clerical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing
Yeah.
substantive that's changing. So I don't have any concern with it moving forward.
Okay.
I don't either.
Agreed.
Would you like a motion?
If you all feel like it's, with those amendments, ready to approve, if you would want to take that vote, but just give me an effective date so that we can update this.
Does anybody have a preference on effective date or ready to move forward with it effective today?
Today.
Yeah.
Make a motion to approve the Community Services Cadet Policy and Procedure number 4.36 with an effective date of 10/31/22. As amended, by the way. Yeah, thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I will get those revisions made with chief and we'll get that posted.
Review of Police Department Policy 1.22, co-response clinician policy, second read.
I didn't have anything for this one.
I have no concerns.
I didn't either.
Third read next meeting?
Please.
Okay.
Review of Police Department Policy 1.23, mounted electric bike policy, draft, second read.
I did not see
didn't see
that
that.
one.
Yeah, I didn't either.
It's not in the packet.
So, we
Did
will
that get
pass
left
over
out?
that.
It probably got
It did.
bound up behind another.
There was only 10 policies in there.
Yeah.
You missed one.
So we'll pass
We'll bring
over
it back for a second read next time.
Yep.
Okay.
Review of the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act policy, draft, second read.
Again, I have no concerns.
Same.
Bring it back for a third.
Yep.
Okay.
No concerns?
No.
Questions? Okay. Third next meeting. Review of fraud prevention policy draft, second read.
Again, no concerns for me.
Same.
I have nothing right now.
For a third next meeting.
Okay.
Review of whistleblower protection policy, second read, draft. I have nothing on this one.
Nor do I. These are all pretty straightforward.
I have no concern.
Okay. Third read next meeting.
Okay.
Review of workplace violence prevention policy draft, second read.
No concerns.
No concern.
Same. Next meeting. For the third, review of domestic violence leave policy draft, second read. No concerns.
None.
None.
I'm going faster than you can type.
No, we're
Third
good.
read next meeting.
That's good. Thank you all.
Review of the revised traffic regulations draft, second read.
I'll slow you all down.
Yes, it will. Save the
That's why I
best.
paused to say
Best
it.
for last.
That's why I left it at the end of the list.
Yes.
So I guess my first question, hopefully all the changes in red captured what you were starting to look at making for clarity and other corrections. And most of that was in the tables.
So under 25, it says work safety zone.
Yeah.
Work safety zones are usually posted with
Correct.
speed limits. And I think it's probably not enough just to say that it's a work safety zone. That it should be posted as well, and maybe what the speed limit is as well. At
They're not
minimum, it should be
always-
posted.
What's that?
I'd say at minimum, it should be posted as a safety zone prior to. I don't think you can assume just because
Right.
Posted, yes.
You know,
Speed,
going
I don't
through
know,
it.
because
Yeah,
it doesn't
yeah, yeah.
always, they don't always reduce speed.
Right, and I was going to say posting.
Formally.
Posting is not always a formal in-ground. It can just be a caution work zone ahead. You know, just a
yeah,
flag on the
that's
side
what
of the
I-
road. Yeah.
Yeah,
And those always, those are, we have to require those going up. And I know on any DOT road, they're mandated, and for any of the long
Right.
projects, they're
Right.
mounted in the ground
Right.
with speed signs. But for our side town roads, I think the practice of just, that we currently do of having signs out is just capture it.
This is great feedback. We were trying to differentiate, and we added in the work safety zone because there's a reference later in the document that didn't have a matching definition. But we were trying to draw a distinction between the zone in front of, say, in front of the school on Grueling. The driveway in front of the school is actually a road called Grueling Circle, and it's all batch pattern, so nobody can park in that section, and that's to keep that lane open, right? So that's a safety zone, and we were trying to draw a distinction between what you all are talking about, because I think most people would refer to the active construction site on the side of the road as a safety zone. So we wanted to bring that distinction in here, but we were trying to come up with the right definition, and I think that's a really important addition that needs to be added in there. So I can definitely make that change.
The
And-
adjustment to the table related to penalties, did we want to keep the dollar amount in there? And just, I know it's listed in there and then with the notation that it changes? Or is it easier to just note that they're
In accordance with.
in accordance with and they're just set?
I feel like we had a long discussion about this last meeting. Back and forth about whether they should be embedded in here as well and then superseded as they change
Yeah.
or not.
I just want to have a policy that doesn't have to come back for changes every time MGL.
Well, it's been 60 years since this one came back before the three. So
Should and did.
That's-
I don't want to
listen,
get into that.
That's not because it didn't need to come back before us for 60 years. It just didn't.
it's a fair question.
And
And
I
I
just-
don't think there's a one right way to do this. I think the fact that we are going to preserve it in a place with your town code going forward, so it's readily accessible not only to you all, but to the citizens, keeps it more at the forefront of our mind as opposed to a file in a drawer somewhere. So I don't think it will go as long as it has without the revision it deserved. But I think your point is well taken as MGLs change.
Well-
Having outdated policies and regulations.
And I'm not thinking so much the dollar amount, but the prohibited activity specific to regulation. The infractions might grow.
Right.
So that table might grow with a third or fourth item with a correlated dollar amount, whatever that might be. So as, Chapter 90, Section 20A, or, 85 changes, we wouldn't have to update our policy. If they want to add another line, we just have to update the correlating table.
True. We don't have right now, because you don't, just to give you for instance, we don't have a lot on parking, though I'm trying to figure out how we address parking better. Somebody illegally parks in a handicap reserved space. We need to capture what you all set as the fine for that, because there's a range. It can go up to a certain amount, but we have to set it as a community. So some of the MGLs are up tos or not to exceeds, and it's local option to set the final. And so some of them will require a specific vote.
So back to the town code, did we not, if I recall, where it was either, where penalties were concerned, didn't we talk about referencing a single table of
Yes,
all
but.
penalties?
Yes,
I don't
but.
like the but.
I know you don't like it, but
Yeah,
it's my
yeah,
job
but
to
Yeah, but-
bring it up.
yeah, because that was my question as well. going to
And
be.
directionally, the idea of
Yeah,
per MGL here,
correct.
and then we have a summary reference in there it says fee per MGL subject to change as MGL changes. But we can list it as a reference point in our own, but it's a single document instead of all these different documents. So anyway,
We can try to structure it in the way that you're describing. Just keep in mind that we're probably using the town code structure to do a lot of things for us. The bylaws that go to town meeting that are voted on by the citizens who are registered to vote encompass the first 200 chapters, right? And there's space in between. So there's call-outs for the future. We moved regulations that boards and commissions who have the authority to set those regulations, like the Board of Health, Select Board, into the 300s. So they're called out separately because they're not bylaws. And so there is a differentiation. So what you all were talking about was creating one fine structure that's clearly communicated and all the bylaws tied back to that. Can we try to make it so the regulations follow the same schedule? We could try. But they have two different legal structures, right? Unless you want to take this to a bylaw level, which is another option. We could.
but either way, we could say, see appendix or Schedule 1 or Schedule A or
Of the
Appendix
bylaws.
A for fines and penalties, actual numbers. And then if we need to have a subsection that says bylaw penalties is 1A and regulation
yeah.
penalties is 1B, fine.
do
If
that.
you need to separate them,
Yeah.
but
Right.
but
yeah.
just having a single section, we can flip there. There's, I don't know, hopefully a 1, 2, 3 pages of tables of the fees related to the things that are called out in the code and
But
the
that's
bylaws and in the regs.
Also making sure that the regulations from the Board of Health follow the same schedule, and maybe they all do. I don't know what the MGLs in each of those cases. We're going to go through every one of these regulations one by one and look at what the different MGLs that authorize them allow. I don't know that they're going to nicely align, but they may nicely align.
Well, but when you say nicely aligned, I just see it as, whatever, Chapter 90A, and these are the ones that are currently there.
Right.
These are the fees, because they're set by MGL. Asterisk, these are set by the corresponding MGL and subject to change at the state level. The current applicable fee in the MGL is the current fee. This may be outdated, basically, that same footnote. The ones that we set, this is our fee. We can change that. The
So-
ones that we have local option,
Right.
this is what we have set per the MGL.
So if I understand what you're trying to accomplish and to allow this to continue to move forward, if I call this table back out, it's going to be an appendix, whatever it's numbered and encoded. Again, that's irrelevant at this point. But you just want, instead of this table in Article 10, you want a reference back to this appendix, whatever it's called in the end.
I mean, ideally, I would just reference MGL, but if we want to have a local copy of all of
no.
them here,
Can, but the issue you're going to keep running into, here's another but. Chief, and he's not here tonight to describe it, Chief is needing clarity for enforcement purposes within these regulations. So whatever we do, just pointing to MGL, then just leave somebody on the side
to
of the
go
road
figure
going,
it out. Yeah, then
Right.
that's why I said if we need a table,
Right.
we need our own table copy of what's printed in MGL, that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't see a reason that's an issue.
No, I was going to say, I agree. It shouldn't just reference MGL. It needs to be a table that's readily accessible
Right.
by somebody who needs to say, I'm enforcing this, and I know where to find it immediately, whether it's, locally set by MGL, whatever the caveats are,
Yeah.
there's distinct tables that are there.
Right.
And that those are changeable as
Right.
we need to, as we see fit, as MGL changes,
Because-
but the policy stands.
Because we have had some instances, and another one happened recently, and I can't remember the exact reference that we have to now address. The town adopted the MGL. Well, it wasn't necessarily an adoption statute. It was, towns have the authority to do that. You need to have the policy or the bylaw, whatever the case is, to describe your process for how you're going to do that. That was not completed. So some of the MGLs, while it's been great just to say we've adopted them, well, it's great that we got the voters to say yes, that's a good thing to do, but we didn't put the structure in place, right?
And didn't enact the pieces needed.
So it's actually not enforceable. You can't do anything with
Right.
it. We got to now go back through the process of actually structuring what the bylaw should say or what the regulation should say so that we can actually enforce what was approved by the voters. So just some of our town meeting votes, and I don't know what the impetus was at the time to bring them forward, that just says we adopt the provisions of this chapter and section. you didn't have to. It was already there, but we didn't do the rest of the work. So we're gonna, as we're going through every one of these things, we're trying to clean that up. So I just want to make sure that we don't just update the regulation and then still leave it vague and hard to enforce.
Go ahead.
So I'm a little confused. So when we did the codification, I know we talked about the truck exclusion penalty was too low, and I think
Yep.
we classified it at $100.
So what I did in here, because I'm just calling it out in this regulation that you all are setting, that you have a bylaw on the books for this.
Yeah.
And so I'm pointing them back to your bylaw for the exact reason that you just described.
Oh, okay. So, but this says $20. At least that's what my copy says.
Yeah.
Where?
Under Article 10,
In the
penalties and.
red
Oh,
table.
because as of today, it's still $20. We haven't gone to town meeting to change that.
Right.
So if you put this in,
Oh,
you have the authority to set the regulations here. If you did
Right.
this tomorrow, you can only do $20 because
Right,
your
because
bylaw
it hasn't been.
hasn't been amended.
Okay.
Ratified or
Correct.
voted on.
the exact
But
reason I don't want it in
thought
there.
this was-
Right.
I thought this was future, so,
I don't know
They
when
may
you all
come
will approve
independent
this.
of each other.
Right,
The code
right.
has to be adopted for the
Right.
penalty to change, unless we
Right.
change it now.
Correct.
Right.
The regulations, the select board has the authority to set the regulation for this.
And
Board of Health has a series of regulations that they have the authority to
Yeah.
set. If you want to wait to approve all of those until we go to town meeting with the bylaws and the proposed changes,
Yeah.
we absolutely can do that. That's a choice that the three of you have. I was just trying to give you a sense, of what this table could look like, so I just put in the existing fees for today.
Oh.
I didn't mean to. confuse
Basically,
you.
we can approve this whenever we're ready to, and it goes into effect, because it's a regulation.
Correct,
I just don't want to.
The fee schedule can't change until it gets voted on.
because that is
Because
set by
that
bylaw
is
and
in
the
a
voters have
bylaw.
that.
Okay,
Correct.
okay.
So they will happen independently, most likely.
Right.
So right now, if this stayed, this would be the right thing, and then we'd have to revise this when the bylaw was revised, which is why I don't want the penalties in
correct.
the regs.
That's one of the
I want
reasons
them
why.
to be called
Okay,
out
okay.
separately, go
Separately.
find them here, so that we can change them independently of changing the entire regs.
Got it.
And one, yeah.
It's convoluted to go through a 15-page regulation to change a fee on one thing.
Well, not only that,
Yeah,
if it's
agreed.
not, if it's embedded in here and somebody says, oh, what's the heavy vehicle exclusion? And they look one place, they have to be looking through different regulations
Right.
to find different tables or different, if
Okay.
I'm thinking of an officer on the side of the road, whether it's a regulation that falls under this one or it's a parking one that's local enforcement, they know where to find them. It's one-stop shopping. They get them all right in whatever
Yeah.
appendix
Yeah.
they're listed in.
Yep.
And I'm just visualizing that this is the appendix or schedule where the fees belong, and it references where in the code, what bylaw number, chapter,
where it came
what
from.
policy
Right.
reg,
Yeah.
Right.
and what the offense is,
And
like
what
the
the-
one
and
one
what the
liner,
penalty.
and then the
Yeah.
penalty.
Yeah.
And all you're updating is that, and if we add, because MGL added more penalties into a subsection, you just
You're
add
just
them
doing
in.
that, and you don't have to mess with this at all. This stays
Right.
standalone.
Okay.
Okay.
But I'm totally on board and following with we need to point to it though.
Yeah.
Go find it in Schedule 1,
Right.
Okay.
in appropriate section.
So if I remove this for now, we'll call it Schedule 1 for a whole.
Yeah,
whatever
whatever,
you wanna
whatever,
call
it
So we
is,
can
just
keep
a
doing
hold,
this
yeah.
work.
Yeah.
And then I'll work separately with the town clerk's office about how to create the appropriate structure that's going to lend itself to the use that you need it to use and the Board of Health's going to need. And just, I want to make sure that we're creating a similar structure that's going to work for everybody. So that you can keep doing, because you all are, you're moving quicker on all of these things than the other boards and commissions. They're getting up to speed on it. But eventually I want to make sure we're following the same process for everything. So after we've done this 2 years worth of work, that the citizens can know exactly how to navigate this. They're not getting a different experience.
Yeah, I'm just picturing a link on the town website that is, fees, fines, and penalties. You click it and it just, there it is, and now you have subsections of which one what are you looking at, what are the fees?
Right.
And it could be permitting fees through, it doesn't matter what they are, they're all listed in there and they're broken
It'll
out.
be a searchable database if
Yes.
people prefer keywords, or it will be a hierarchy table of contents with clickable
But it
links.
all sits there in its own document and it's just referenced and points back.
And I would expect these to link back. If it's going to be in the code and linkable, right, every fee, you
Right.
should click on the title of that fee and section and go to read the reg.
Yep.
Right, if
It's
they're,
both ways,
if they,
right?
yeah, if
So
they have
it's
concerns with it, then it jumps.
what
a-
is that fee
A hyperlink
for?
right
Go
there.
read about
Yeah.
it. Yeah, both
Okay.
ways, so.
Okay, I will
Gonna
work
make
with
it the
them on
most
that.
user-friendly, and then those who need it readily available either can print or link it right on a mobile device and do what they need to do for their job.
Right, okay.
I just have one question on the next table.
Mm-hmm.
Schedule 3, stop and yield signs. Why do we have a stop and a yield
It's
sign?
not a place, it's the entire street. I was thinking that through too.
So it's at one end and then the, okay.
Because yeah, it says yield, then stop, please.
I'm like, we are very.
I had to read it 5 times
Yeah,
too.
yeah. Okay.
My understanding is there's a stop on it at one place and a yield on it at different places.
That's correct. Would it be better to have that called out as a separate line?
I think that'd be more confusing.
Okay,
Just leave
leave
it.
it alone.
It's more of just an inventory. It's not, you know.
It's just an inventory.
It's just an inventory, so that's fine.
Right.
It just caught me off guard. I was like, where do we have both of them simultaneously posted? But
Right.
it makes sense that I was just not thinking correctly.
That one hung me up a little bit. I do know I have to go back through here. Some are fully spelled out street, others are abbreviated. So I'm going to clean this table up. And I think you
Oh, okay.
also asked to have it sorted alphabetically by the primary street, not the intersecting street. So I will sort it in that manner so that you can easily find the street you're looking for. So we'll make those changes if that addition of that column works for what you all were trying to achieve.
Does for me.
Okay.
And just to be clear, this is actual inventory that we currently have, not locations where we want them to be.
I'm glad you asked that. So if you go back to the version that you had at your last read, there was maybe a handful, just
2
a
or
few where
3.
it says propose or something like that. Some that Glenn was proposing to you all. So I'll call those out for your next meeting separately. I took it out of this because it was a lot of extra information, but we'll call that out separately. Predominantly, yes, all of these are in place or you've already approved them. For instance, you all voted to approve Pleasant Street over Central Street, Central remaining the throughway. Those haven't been installed yet, but the project's done, and so we just need to put the signs in the ground.
Okay.
So from that standpoint, physically are they there? No, but have they been voted on and approved and ordered? Yes. So those we didn't call out separately.
Right. So if they're not there, they should be, and they will be.
Correct.
Okay.
But there were just a handful of ones as he was driving the route, ones that he would like to bring to your attention for
Okay.
consideration. So I'll call those out separately so that we can have that fuller conversation.
On the signs part, like where we have parking prohibited one way, I mean, one way should be signed, but parking, are they all signed? Are they painted? Are they both? Are they, some are, some aren't? It's not called out in here. It's a question to, should we identify?
You're talking about the no parking?
Well, start with parking prohibited, yeah. Are those areas
Leicester Street-
signed? Are they painted?
Leicester
Are they
Street
both?
is. North Street is.
I just meant, is it consistent? And if it isn't always the same, then should
Pop-
we call it out?
Poplar
as
Mountain
a-
is. Yeah, most of these are all in that place except Bridge Street. Bridge Street, I don't believe, has the signage. So that would be a change. Poplar Mountain does have them posted, at least on one side. I need to double check on River Street. That's a holdover from the 60s. And there are no signs there today. And we've spoken to the residents who currently live in that neighborhood, and they don't recall in their time living there seeing the
there's ever
signs
been
there.
one?
My assumption is because the one street I took off of here because it's no longer a street was Roger Street. If you all know the driveway into the mill down there, Renovators, that was a road. It used to go between 2 buildings, and the town discontinued it, sold it to the property owner. So that had a no parking area. My guess is going to be that the mill workers used to park along, when the parking lot overflowed, they'd park along the street. And so I think the previous select board was trying to be very clear about where you could and couldn't park on those side streets. And so a lot of your no parking areas are in Leicester River Stretch in that neighborhood. We don't have that same problem anymore. And so I don't think that there's been a need to have that posted. But places like Leicester Street would not have a place to park if you wanted to. So that would never work. So I think some make sense to keep. But if River Street didn't have it today, even if it's listed here, doesn't make sense to keep it. Doesn't seem to be an issue.
Can I just ask a question on the, I know we are in the process of changing the street signage?
Yep.
Where's that at?
We had requested, Glenn's gone street by street to figure out how many street signs we have. So we have that count. And we were requesting quotes on what new signs would cost us to do the install. So I just need to put it through for a capital request.
Okay.
I guess higher level, not specific to any street. If we're going to have it prohibited, it should be marked in some way, because there's a
Agreed.
fine.
Agreed.
There's a penalty. So if there's no signage there, are we adding a signage or are we stopping doing it?
That's the question.
And, or is it painted, or is it something, right? Like, no parking here to corner, you know what?
Right. River Street's
So,
the,
so it does, we don't have my point is, we don't have a spot on the table for sign, yes, no, or what kind of sign, because it's parking prohibited. But we should be sure that if we're not going to do that, that all of them are marked,
agreed.
so,
So the only one that is not marked, that is currently in effect, is River Street.
right.
So
It's okay.
Do
So
you want it
put in a
marked or
list
do
of
you
what
want-
to do,
Right.
right? Those are ones we need to solve before we
Bridge,
adopt this.
Bridge Street is proposed.
Mark. I say mark.
Keep it and mark it.
Yep.
Okay.
For River and Bridge.
Yeah.
Now, Bridge, you have to vote on because it's not currently in effect, but once it is, we could post it.
Yeah.
And that's
But we
just to deal with the, it's so narrow through there, and people are better about not parking in the way, but I know it's happened in the past.
I don't know why there's any parking on Bridge Street at all.
It shouldn't be.
But I'm not sure 580 feet covers that, is my point.
Yeah, I was going to say,
No
where does,
parking, you know, on east or west side at any time. Bridge Street.
It's that 500 feet, 580 feet is the street for us.
and
So
that
takes
brings you
the
from Route
intersection
2 to the bridge.
So
Oh,
it's
yeah,
the
I'm
full
thinking
length.
of it on the other side too.
Yep.
Sorry, yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah. What
right,
happens
right.
in Wendell's the town of Wendell.
Yeah, that's the other side. That's the other side.
No,
There's
no, it's
parking.
true,
There's
it's
parking
true.
spaces over there on the
Off street.
Off street.
Off street.
The only one that I have seen people park, and it's not on street. It's just before the bridge on our side, on the south side, I think.
East,
Uh,
west.
just
Are we on Bridge?
yeah, just before the bridge.
On the right?
On the right, they
That's a west side.
they
believe
pull.
it's
Yeah,
west.
west side. They pull in.
There's just like enough
There's
of
enough of a
dirt
pull
on the
off.
side.
Yeah. This doesn't address that, correct? That would still be a viable option.
I need to familiarize myself with what's happening there, but
Yeah.
no, this is specifically on the side of the road layout.
Okay, fair enough.
So
To me, that should be where someone goes when the bridge, because it's a one-lane bridge,
right,
not a parking spot.
right.
I think that was kind of its purpose to some degree, was to get out of the way a little bit at the entrance of the bridge.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know.
I can ask Glenn for clarification.
I just
Maybe
know
more
when people are
familiar.
actively out there using that area for recreation,
Yeah,
that
like
becomes a
fish and-
parking spot, you know, because there's only so many on the Wendell side, and we have 0 on our side.
Right.
Well, someone's got a parking area on the other side now. There's a lot more room. And our one-ways are obviously marked. Should be.
Yes, all of these one-ways are marked.
Without driving them all, but they should be, obviously.
Yes.
Not always followed.
Absolutely not. Not always. Not regularly. In some cases.
The number of people that come the wrong way on Forest entering Route 2
I've
is
seen it. I've seen it as well.
astonishing.
Yeah.
Does
Or
the-
Kavanaugh the wrong way even.
Yeah.
I have seen that a couple
When,
times.
when they have an accident, it will
That's
come
gonna
into
cost
play.
them some.
Yeah.
You wanted the inclusion of the state roads as throughways?
Yeah.
Does that work? I'll work it in again as an alphabetical table, but and I just put a little asterisk after that, just
Yeah.
to make it clear to anybody reading this that those are all state roads.
Makes
Okay.
sense to me.
All right, so I will make those additional changes. I will work with the town clerk on the draft penalties appendix. Any other changes you want to see for your next revision? I do, this has been out to council for a while, so I need to follow up with her one more time to see if she has any more recommended changes. And the only other question that I posed to her is how does she want us to handle parking issues? I mean, we dealt with no parking on your streets here, but specifically in municipal parking lots. Let's use this facility for an example. There are some enforcement issues and some other things that this does not address. Does that make sense to try to embed that in here? Or does it make sense to just be a standalone, smaller policy that just deals with how do we handle parking violations within municipal lots? And again, specifically dealing with handicap parking and other issues like that. You're not necessarily impeding traffic. So that, I guess you could embed it in here. The only section that wasn't here that's been deleted from the modeled example was dealing with parking lot, like a pay for parking, like a parking garage or something like that.
Yeah.
I didn't think there was any interest or appetite to even explore metered parking in this town.
No.
So
Not for me,
all of
anyways.
that's gone.
Only if there's a charger at it.
Right, and that's for a different purpose, right? So what is left is to just deal with these other issues. When you have like a live parking zone, that's meant for a quick, I'm dropping off this book at the library and I'm leaving. But we have people parking.
And leaving
Loading
it
and
in for
unloading only,
hours,
5
right.
minute, 10 minute, whatever.
So
yeah,
we're
yeah.
trying to tease out those issues so that people can use the spaces that have been designated for them for the appropriate reasons and not have that interfered with. And it doesn't happen all the time, but we are having some instances where it is being infringed upon and we need to have the right enforcement tools in place. So I've just asked council to advise. Do we try to address those issues in this policy or should we just deal with it as a separate regulation to address how you handle parking? So hopefully I should have an answer this week from her.
Okay. We probably do want to address EV charging parking spots too. We don't have the overabundance of people looking for them, but they shouldn't be a parking place. They should be a charging place.
Agreed.
When are we doing that exercise,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and I want to bring that other proposal to you all about dedicated veteran parking locations.
Dedicated what?
Veteran parking?
Yeah. I thought there was some interesting points about that. We should discuss it.
Right.
Whether or not there's specific veteran parking or not,
Yep.
which. Anything else on traffic regs for tonight? Continued reading next week, next meeting. Leave it at that. Review meeting minutes, October 17th, 2022.
Make a motion to accept the meeting minutes of Select Board, Water Commissioner, and Board of Library Trustees meeting Monday, October 17th, 2022, as written.
Second? Any discussion?
None.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting minutes, October 20th, 2022.
Make a motion, we accept the meeting minutes as written for October 20th, 2022.
Second? I assume no discussion?
No discussion?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can I ask for an amendment?
Two.
The title on 17? We just need to amend that. The library trustees
I was
weren't
going to
there.
say, that
That's
was
a,
only on the
right, that's a copy and
20th.
paste error.
It had me confused. I thought you were jumping down to the 20th
Right.
when
He
you were
said
doing
it, and
it.
I didn't, yeah, okay. It
I'm
didn't
not sure how
register
that
why
happened,
that was
but
wrong.
can we make that change?
Yes.
Make a motion, we amend October 17, 2022 minutes to remove Board of Library Trustees meeting from the title.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Issuance of cemetery deeds, number 574. Did I? Yeah, I skipped over.
Yeah,
We'll go back to it.
All right, we'll go back.
Yeah, we'll
Perfect.
go back, sorry.
Make a motion to issue cemetery deed number 574, lot number 1237 to Donna Bazzaio, 19 Maple Avenue, as deed owner number 1, and Lynn Bazzaio as deed owner number 2.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Going back, review and issuance of the 6th water commitment for FY23.
Motion to approve the sixth commitment of the Water Commissioners fiscal year 2023 in the amount of $87.87.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And both of those are right next to the chairman.
Who was way too eager to sign them. Last but not least, review of the FY21 Community Development Block Grant Quarterly Report, ending September 30th, 2022.
I make a motion to accept the quarterly report of 2021 QPR number 3-2021, Erving Lead, Northfield Warwick, again 00923, issued by the Franklin County Regional Housing and Redevelopment Authority with a budget of $767,796.20. Funds used to date, $198,140 for housing and rehabilitation in Erving, Northfield, and Warwick.
I'll second that. Any discussion?
None.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Anything else for tonight? Okay.
I had a question, I know this is not on the agenda, but what was the final decision on Mariah's pay scale? Do you recall?
In terms of the
The step?
The grade or the step?
Yeah, step and grade, yeah.
I have to go pull the record from a few.
The
meetings
only
ago.
reason I bring it up is while you were gone, there was Northfield hired a position out for grants at the amount of $70,000 a year. And when we look at upgrading our positions, we try to look at the community as well as to what the going rate is. And there's a difference in position,
Yep.
Right.
but I would argue that the town planner is more involved than the current position in Northfield.
So what I'll do is include, because that likely wasn't captured in the information that I collected. We're preparing for the wage study now. So I've already collected Northfield's information, but I
Okay.
will add that to the collection
All right? Thank you.
so that that can be a point that's considered when you all move forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Next meeting is the 14th. Still tentative on timing for an executive session meeting. It'll be the 7th or the 21st, most likely. Maybe the 7th, for sure the 21st, if not. But we'll confirm later this week
Okay.
with the time and date. Looking to be queuing up at least a first round discussion next meeting about wage study. Start that background joint with finance. We should let them know ahead of time. I know we've talked about it, but I don't think we firmed it up last time. Correct. So just shoot that out to them, make sure they're available for the 14th.
Okay.
Amongst everything else. And capital is starting review soon, so we're
Next
underway.
week.
This week?
Next week,
Oh,
the 9th. I have to finish my work so that they can do the
it's
review
like,
next
you
week.
did not say this week, did you?
All the capital requests came in a multitude of formats. I have to put it in a
We need
packet.
some place to just they go.
One day.
Okay. That's it?
That's it.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Have a good evening, everyone.
Was it exciting as you would hope?